the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ and fellow earth travelers. Along with Mr. Anderson and Honor Mama Jeannie, you're listening to your Last Call, 2 hours of Christian talk radio with a sting. Brought to you by the Natural Family Foundation. As goes the family, so goes the nation. Our call-in number, if you wish to participate, is 614-423-4220. Our show can be accessed on the mmunited.org website if you've happened upon us by chance. I'm your host, B.J. Edwards, and this is my world. Hey, thanks for tuning in today, folks. You are appreciated. And happy Groundhog Day. I guess winter's over with, Mr. Anderson. No shadow, no winter.
Oh, good. Good. I will get my yard. What?
We're circling again, which means we're probably not. We tried a new camera today. We're hoping that'll help, but I don't know whether it's going to or not. The question of the day: are you occupying until he comes, or are you being occupied? Status report on the church today. Greg Hopkins will join us today. He's a recovering lawyer, ex-prosecuting attorney, Christian lad who, it's just going to be interesting to see what his perception is of where we are in America. You're probably going to like, well, maybe you're not going to like BJ's perception. Hey, good news first. Thanks to the Alabama Supreme Court for ruling the obvious, that an unborn baby is a person. Imagine that. Please, please, please do not let this notion die for lack of a second.
Well, I got a live one, so.
You got a live one?
Yeah, a newborn.
Oh, yeah. Congratulations, Mr. Anderson.
My first grandson out of 4 grandchildren. I finally got a boy. Well, my daughter gave me a boy.
Yeah. There's a chance we'll be talking about family today, sometime today, so maybe you have something to associate
that for
with.
My family affair?
Yes, no.
Portion of the show?
Congratulations. Between you and Coach, I'm just eating my heart out here. Again, thanks to Alabama Supreme Court, but don't let this go. Don't let this die. Don't let this die for a second to the notion. You don't have to be in Alabama to express your appreciation. I plan on calling some friends of mine in Alabama and thank them and encourage them. What happens in Alabama doesn't necessarily have to stay in Alabama. And it could affect the rest of the nation. This is likely going to be pursued through the courts, as is everything. Taxes in the courts. How to slow down America, right? Sheesh.
That's how we're occupied.
Yep. Look, at the prison guards are looking. And if they see that you don't mean business, off you go back into solitary confinement. What? Prison? Prison guards? What are you talking about, BJ? Hang in there, because you just might not be where you perceive yourself to be in old Christian America. Again, more on that later. Hey, more good news. Despite worries about the government shutdown harming the economy, because we all know that the government fuels the economy and not the other way around, right? If it wasn't for the government, capitalism just couldn't exist. Boy. U.S. employers added a whopping 304,000 jobs in January. That was more than expected. And I think they even counted the government shutdown in that. Wages, by the way, also rose 3 cents an hour for a one-year average of a 3.2% increase. Someone tell Cory Booker et al. That if he's really running for president because he wants to create a country where parents can put food on the table, where does Cory live? Where there are good paying jobs and good benefits in every neighborhood, that he doesn't have to go to Big Brother. Trump is already doing that for him. Speaking of the president, I do want to personally thank Donald Trump for being one who stood up for pro-life and is about to stand up for our border. And this is going to get very messy, folks. It already is. Again, the president, America, needs you to get involved. For evil to flourish, good men need only do nothing. Remember my encouragement last week? Do you have your representative's telephone number from mayor, city council, school board on up? Again, for evil to flourish. Silence in the face of evil is evil itself. Not to act is to act. We really do need to engage the culture, folks. Call him Monday. He's going to have a presidential speech on Tuesday. And I suspect, Mr. Ann, I suspect he's going to declare emergency. What do you think?
No, I don't think he will.
Really?
Yeah. No, I think he's building that wall as we speak.
Well, okay.
And I think he's just going to move on with what he said he would do.
You know, please. If you're a Democrat and you have a door to your abode, or maybe you have a fence or wall around it, please don't be duplicitous. There's a reason that we have doors. Did you know that? And it's called privacy, but it's also called protection. And the same thing applies for borders. Come on. I mean, the appeals to these poor children and these poor folks that are coming in, we have to let them into America. If you really, truly believe that, Democrats, why don't you go down to your local homeless shelter, rent a van, go down to your local homeless shelter, and bring as many of those people you can into your house and feed them at your own expense. Or maybe your neighbors will take up a collection, or heaven forbid, the church might help you out. Do that. If you really believe in what you say you believe in, show me. Don't tell me that I have to take my money to do what you think. You know, taxes, the word tax means to oppress. It's to put a burden on something. And taxes are the transfer of money. And money, as BJ's been telling you for years, is the ability to make decisions. The more money you have, the more decisions you can make. That's what all this taxation is about. I don't care if multi-billionaires, multi-millionaires don't pay more taxes. I don't like what the government's doing with the money to begin with. And we want to give them more so we can hire more Cory Bookers or Ocasio, $175,000 a year for a barmaid, a socialist barmaid. I shouldn't even be speaking about her. She should be a non-item. She shouldn't be where she is, but she is, which is very telling. It's exemplary to where we are in America. Do you really want socialism? Honest to God, do you really want socialism? Do you understand what that means? Again, you're transferring the ability to make decisions. Your personal sovereignty. The more you give to the government, the less decisions you can make on your own. I've got an article, I'll get to it probably after the break, about what they can do with that money. What?
Oh, well, what they can do with that money. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you being a doctor, a proctologist, perhaps?
Yeah. I don't like what they do with it now. They might as well do that.
Yeah. Let me tell you what's happening on the other side. I got this. Do you keep in touch with the ACLU? Do you keep in touch with your opposition? Do you? You don't. You should. BJ, last week, mounting pressure from thousands of activists like you forced President Trump to reopen the government with a temporary funding bill. Make no mistake, Trump will keep fighting for the border wall and for more funding for his detention and deportation force. Keeping people out of your house. Keeping people out of your house. Isn't that what you have the police for? I have a visitor tonight, Mr. Officer. He's uninvited. And he's taking stuff. He's in my refrigerator and eating stuff. Well, Mr. Homeowner, do you believe we should have open borders? Of course I do. Okay. Click. Right now, the ball is in the House's court. Your representatives are currently negotiating a new funding deal. Call Congress now. No border wall. No more money for Homeland Security to abuse and terrorize those that are invading your home without your consent. The ACLU has been in court fighting family separation. And these cruel policies, DHS does not deserve the unprecedented raise that Trump will give them. He's digging in his heels. Oh, Lord, could we talk about that? So we have to demand that Congress cut DHS's massive budget. Thanks for staying in the fight. Let's not forget how we got into this mess. Trump's desire to implement unconscionable, inhumane, and illegal immigration policies. He created a crisis at the border with his own policies that target asylum seekers. People that are breaking into your house. Well, the door was unlocked. Well, you didn't have a door on your house, so what was I supposed to think? A wall won't fix it, according to the ACLU. The Trump administration is violating U.S. and international human rights law by denying asylum seekers entry. Migrants who are fleeing prosecution and violence must wait in Mexico. More tearful information. The conditions become worse as a backlog of migrants, and more is coming. They have a line in front of your house now to break in and take your stuff. And when you complain about it, you're racist, homophobic, all the names that you can possibly imagine. Just like a spoiled child. The administration can fix this problem by reversing its own anti-asylum policies, anti-forced entry policies. Not by building a wall, not by having your door, not by giving more money to ICE, not for paying the police to help stop this. As Trump insists on effective solutions like a wall and jailing an unprecedented 52,000 immigrants per day, illegal trespassers on your property. We must confront the real crisis on the border and the policies that manufactured it. 614-423-4220. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. B.J. will keep challenging Trump's anti-asylum policies in the courts. But it's activists like you who make Trump change course on Friday and reopen the government without getting this border wall. And it's activists like those that are listening to this program today that don't do, this is Do Radio, folks, that don't do what they're supposed to be doing. You remain silent, and in your silence, you're saying to the other folks, okay, go ahead and do it. I'm not going to say anything. Let me say it again. Ask your congressman, senator, and president. They need to hear from you. I asked you last week, get those representatives' numbers. I hope you have them. Maybe I'll give a test this morning. And what are they going to do with that money? Let's talk about Big Brother when we come back. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Your last call.
Praise for the morning, praise for them springing, fresh from the morning.
Last call with B.J. Edwards. Real talk about real life.
It's a good thing I don't sing, Mr. Anderson. Hey, if you just want to listen to the show, 641-741-0816. I hope we're coming across loud and clear, guys. Just give me a thumbs up or something out there in I am land, chat land.
YouTube land.
Yeah.
We can't see it in the other lands.
Do you have? I have a door. I have a door on my house, Mr. Anderson. Should I feel guilty about that?
You do?
Yeah.
Keeps the cold out.
Well, that's why I have it. That's it. That's right, officer. That's why I have the door. It's trying to keep the cold out. Just as long, Mr. BJ. I notice you have a lock on that door. And what are you doing with that lock on your door? Well, gosh, I guess I don't really have a good reason, do I? You sure don't.
Keep the bears out.
We'll have Big Brother. Yeah, they can open doors, right? We'll have Big Brother come over and we'll take those locks off. And if you're real nice, we'll let you keep the door. But, a curtain might do just as well. Or maybe some inventive capitalist, I guess we don't have those anymore, do we? Might invent a door that you don't even need to have a physical barrier there. Just air that keeps the cold and the... Do you know how insane this world is right now?
Why do we need passports?
Yeah, you make a great point, Mr. Anderson. And other nations, they need to get it. They need to get with the program. Oregon, that's on the left coast, north left coast. Oregon could become the first state to require in-home surveillance of newborn babies.
Isn't that crazy?
The one that they let live, that is. The 2/3 that they let live.
If there's a survivor?
Yeah. If Oregon Governor Kate Brown has her way, the Beaver State will become the first to require universal home visits for newborn children in care of their own parents. Let that soak in. Let the flavor, the aroma of that get into your nostrils. Senate Bill 526, introduced this month in Oregon Legislative Assembly as part of Brown's budget, orders the Oregon Health Authority to study home visiting by licensed health care providers. Lawmakers went so far as to declare that SB 526 is an emergency measure. One that requires a resolution by the end of the year. The 18 sponsors of the bill claim that its passage is necessary for the immediate preservation of public peace, health, and safety And therefore, an emergency is declared in this situation. Money is the ability to make decisions. Oregon, you keep paying those taxes because that sounds like they're putting cradle to grave, right? They're putting your money to good use. They're making decisions for you.
Are you aware that our new governor, DeWine, has signed a similar action in Ohio?
I haven't researched that yet. I'm afraid to look at what the guy's doing. I really am, because I know, and I'm embarrassed because I voted for him. Ooh. And I knew when I voted for him it was a mistake, but I didn't know what else to do. What else can you do? This is because we have not been participating. If you're a Christian, you haven't been salt and light. If you have common sense, you haven't been using it. Christian or not. Do you really want more government in your life? Do you really want to tax billionaires at a 90% rate so they can use that money to hire more healthcare workers? And by the way, please, please, please run the numbers. Run the numbers. How many doctors and nurses, pharmacists, etc., do we have in the United States? What would it take, number-wise, to offer complete health care to every American, plus the 20-plus million or so trespassers that have come into this nation? How many people would you have to have? Do we have that many people? When you go to a doctor's office, do you have to wait, or are they sitting at the door saying, well, it's about time you got here. We've been waiting for you for 15 minutes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Think about this.
Traffic was bad.
Yeah. Extreme policies are being introduced across the nation. Look at the Democratic nominees, the Democrat proposals that are proposing to be president of the United States. Look what they're talking about. And they can't get their agenda done without your money. Voluntary contribution. I hear you, Don. I hear you. Yeah. Your children, that's right, Lowell, your children belong to the state. They don't belong to you. We're kind enough, the state is kind enough, to let you at least give birth to them, at least 2/3 of them, the ones they decide that shouldn't be here. But they're kind enough to let you have the children birth, and then we'll take it from here. We just need more of your money. You won't need the money anyway because we're going to take care of all your child's needs. Extreme policies are being introduced across the nation. While Oregon is proposing a policy that would trample parental rights, other states are introducing and passing policies that would take more lives by allowing abortion up to birth. Last week, New York passed a bill, Governor Cuomo signed it, which removes restrictions on abortions after 24 weeks, decriminalizing it and makes abortion a constitutional right. Other states, including Alaska, Colorado, District of Columbia, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Oregon, et cetera, all have little to no restrictions on late-term abortions. Again, New York's law has drawn national attention because elected leaders burst into celebration when it passed, even lighting up the World Trade Center in pink. Other states are already seeking to follow New York's lead. Vermont has now introduced a bill that would allow abortion without restrictions, as well as New Mexico and Rhode Island. Big brother, folks. You are in 1984. They're monitoring you. They not only know what you're saying, they know what you're planning. They know where you're going to be. They know where you're going to be. And we want to give them more control over our lives? Really? I know. I'm just an old white guy. Christian mentality. What do I know, right? What do I know? We're an occupied nation, folks. Try to do something right. You know, Mr. Anderson, you and I talked some time ago about when you, by the time you get out of bed, have your breakfast, and turn the key to your car, you've probably broken a half a dozen laws. It's just...
Yeah, maybe even before you opened your eyes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The thought police. The thought police.
Yeah, your dreams are questionable.
Yes. Think about that. And it's up to them to enforce them when they want to. If you've ever been to a protest, it really depends on what side of the protest you're on, doesn't it? Go to an abortion clinic. You can have somebody that is in your face, a pro-abort, doing everything to intimidate you, to upset you, to infuriate you, disturbing the peace. And the police won't do nothing. But God help you if you're out there and you're pro-life and you're trying to save a baby's life and talk some sense into people that are walking into that clinic. Boy, there's a oxymoron. Health clinic. But God help you if your intention is to stop that act, stop the killing of a child. There are restrictions. And if you step 1 foot, 1 toe, 1 pinky on that property, you're liable to find your rear end in jail and be shown as a bad example. Now, we could say there's 2 different laws, one for conservative Christians and one for secular humanists. You can look at it that way. And on the surface, it does appear that way. But I really think, and I'm going to get into this after the break, I really think that we are in a prison setting, but don't know it. Our every move is being scrutinized. Everything that we do is being watched. And they can let us scream and yell and holler and be that beta male as long as we're not effective. If we start becoming effective, slam bam, thank you, ma'am. They will shut you up. Look at Roger Stone. And I'm not using his as an example of conservatism or Christianity, but as an individual citizen in the United States that has had his rights trampled on, that has been required to spend thousands, likely hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend himself for something that others, many, many others, and I'll say on the other side, have done and are actually being praised, used as good examples. That's part of the incarceration. That's part of the prison system. That's part of the captivity that we're in today's America. They can't put us all behind bars, although they'd like to. And maybe taxing 90% of billionaires will help them do that. Don't you think they don't want to build more prisons? And don't you think they don't want to shut us up no matter how they can? But as long as we're out on good behavior, we've got that little chain on us, or what do they call that thing, Mr. Anderson? The electronic.
A homing device.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as they got that on you, and you don't go where you're not supposed to go, because they can track you and know where you're going.
It's like what we put on our dogs, electronic collar.
Yeah, yeah.
Keep them from leaving the yard.
That we have that in essence on us, and we're paying for that. And the problem is, at least from our side, is that we don't know it. We don't realize that we're in captivity. We don't realize that there was a war fought, a cultural war, and lost. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. We're going to get into that culture war when we come back. 614-423-4220. Silence is golden, right? And we're having Greg come up. Greg Hopkins come up at the 11 o'clock hour. Greg's a good man. You're going to love it. What?
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
Sound like somebody tried to call in. Heaven forbid. Hey, we talked about... Huh?
Scared them off.
Yeah, scared them off. I'm probably afraid they're going to answer the phone. We talked, oh man, maybe a month or two ago about Asia Bibi. That was the lady in Pakistan who was jailed and then let out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was some news recently.
Yeah. She was more than 8 years in prison and detention. And the Islamic country's highest court has just upheld its acquittal of Bibi, clearing her of all charges of blasphemy. Again, she spent 8 years on death row, falsely accused of insulting Islam. In America, if you don't insult Christianity, you'll probably be jailed.
If you don't?
Yes. Even though she was acquitted last October, her life has been in danger from radical Muslims. So she hadn't been freed yet. She's been held under guard at a secret place since then. It all started in 2009 when Bibi brought water to some fellow workers, but they wouldn't drink from the same container as her because, drum roll please, we go to no expense. We do go to no expense. She was a Christian. They ended up arguing and accused her of insulting Islam and its founder, Muhammad. Her attorney called Tuesday's ruling a victory not only for Bibi, last Tuesday when she was exonerated, but for Pakistan Constitution and the rule of law. And I don't think so, sir. She met her better run. One justice went as far as to say that Bibi's accusers were guilty of perjury. If the case had not been so sensitive, they would have been jailed for life. Asia Bibi's safety is still in jeopardy until she leaves Pakistan. In October, when she first qualified and was acquitted, radical Muslims reacted in outrage, demanding Bibi's execution. They rioted in the streets, and Bibi went into hiding as Muslim extremists went to house looking to kill her. An appeal was filed. This is extremism. This is extremism. And I think it's sort of kind of where we're headed. You know, I look at my emails every week, and I hear, please help us save babies. Help us stop the invasion. Help us this, help us that. This has been going on for weeks, months, years. We seem to be helpless. I wrote an article for Wisconsin Christian News. Rob Pugh is a great man. There's so many people that boy, I'm going to digress here. I am so blessed to know the people that I know. And I got...
Thank you.
Yeah, I most of the people that I know. I will include you, Mr. Anderson. You're a good brother. When I got bit by the righteous bug 30 years ago, I didn't know where I was going to end up and who I was going to end up with. And this is far from over. This is far from over. But I thank my lucky stars. Look, I've gone from being somebody, and I was at the mountaintop, folks. I was at the mountaintop. I had a business that I was working out of the house. I was making as much money as I wanted to make, and I was working probably 2 to 3 hours a week, if that. Now, I squandered a lot of that time, and I wish I had some of that time, all that time back, and all those capabilities in terms of making money back, but they're gone. But what happened to me is, in the business I was in, it was highly competitive. And you had to keep juggling balls. And first, I'd drop a ball and I'd bend over and pick it up. And then it came to the point I got so focused on this righteous bug that bit me, the disease that was in my system, that wouldn't let me sleep, that kept me continually going and trying to learn and continually participating, trying to be salt and light. Finally, I lost the business. And I lost the business because where there is no vision, the people perish. My vision was not making money anymore. My vision was trying to correct what was going on in America. And I could see that happening. You know, this is a time, I think, when Rush Limbaugh first hit the scene. And I started listening to him. And you know what Rush taught me? Rush taught me it's okay to question authority. I want you to think about that. Because in general, that's not a good idea. Unless, of course, it's a warden and you're a captive and you want to change that. And then other people came into my life. And I started... I joke around a lot. I'm very competitive, very, very competitive. Played sports all my life and hate losing, just hate losing. Well, when you get into this righteous game and when you're swimming upstream all the time and the rules and the deck is stacked against you, you don't win a lot. You hardly win. Let me rephrase that. You hardly appear to win. And that's key. Because like a diamond, you take off those rough edges. But you have to use a hard surface to do that. And that's why I want to encourage so many of you to start doing. You're missing so much. You have no idea what you're missing. Frustration, yeah. But again, you're taking care of that diamond. And I have learned, and again, I don't know it all. Not even close. I mean, I think I just scratched the surface. But what I've learned in the 30 years of what I'll call losing, and by the way, you learn a lot more when you lose than when you win. I feel so sorry for New England, right? Because all they do is win. There's my plug for Super Bowl Sunday.
That's good enough.
But because, that's plenty. Because of my participating, I started to run into other people, and I started to learn from these other people. And I started befriending these other people, and yeah, Mr. Anderson, you're one of them. And the learning from them was just incredible, and it's still happening. And you know what? Christians argue, and they spit and spatter. But in the end, they are united in Christ, in the Word, and in Spirit, which is something we never want to forget about.
Our friend Roger.
Okay. I guess go ahead and take that call. So I just want to encourage you all
live, honey,
to participate.
Yes, Jim.
You're live, Roger.
Roger.
You're on the air.
You're on the air.
Good morning.
And
Good
you're live.
morning.
Good morning, brother.
Just wanting to talk a little bit about the mountaintop experience you had.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, are you wanting to tell us that that mountaintop was unfulfilling?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Not at all. Not at all. I apologize if I did not get that point across. when I lose, I learn a lot. And I was going to share the story about an individual that I talked with, Roger, a couple of weeks ago. And this individual is a proclaimed atheist. And I started talking to him, and the conversation went on for about an hour, and he couldn't get enough information. And this is a well-educated man, well-educated.
Well, but I'm talking about your financial mountaintop, your success mountaintop.
Okay. Go ahead and ask that question again then. I misunderstood.
Well, you were successful in business.
Yeah.
You were successful in competition.
Mm-hmm.
You were successful, it sounds like, in the acquiring of certain things that you might want.
Right.
And I think sometimes, you know, what we hear from so many people is, oh, it was all meaningless. All of that was meaningless. Well, I would say the perspective is slanted there. In proper perspective, there is nothing wrong with success in those areas. In proper perspective, with a biblical foundation, I enjoy going to a fancy restaurant and having a nice meal versus a McDonald's hamburger. I enjoy some of the nice things that success brings forth. But it has to be in perspective, and the foundation has to be a biblical foundation of perspective. Because I hear a lot of people, you know, it was so meaningless, and I had this and that, and I found Jesus, and Jesus was everything. And it changed everything. Well, I think you didn't have a good perspective in the first place with your success. What are your thoughts?
I've never really thought of it in those terms, Roger. I've been to that mountaintop that men want to be at. Everybody, if you could have just a day in my life where there wasn't a worry, Roger, if I had my business refined to this point. If I needed a new van for the family. So what I did is I took that 3 hours, 4 hours, I made probably a dozen calls, maybe a half a dozen calls. And 3 weeks later, I had 5 figures in my hand. And I paid for the van in cash. And then went back to whatever I was doing. Golfing.
But was anything wrong with that success?
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
What I regret is I was only working 2 or 3 hours a week. Mm-hmm. I wasn't spending the rest of the time doing what I'm doing now. I didn't have a radio show. I wasn't writing articles. I wasn't working for the Lord. I was just sitting back and taking His blessings and saying, "Thank you, Lord. I just think that where we're going to go out to eat tonight, I'm not going to worry about the world or anything else. I'm just going to take care of myself, and whatever I need, and I'll take care of." I don't regret getting to the mountaintop. No, not at all. I don't regret being there, but I regret what I would consider wasting the rest of the time that I had. That's what I regret.
I would agree with that, and I may not getting my thoughts across properly. And the danger on this topic is as someone says, "My goodness, Weaver, what a fool you are." That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is perspective of that success, biblically based, honoring God with that success, acknowledging God with that success.
Which I didn't do.
Enjoying that success. I think we hear a lot of people in the Christian circles who, they denounce all of their success because they have a new revelation of Jesus, when I don't think Jesus has any problem with success. He just wants to be on the top of the success mountain with you, where you are honoring Him with that success, acknowledging Him with that success.
Yep.
We're not, believe me, I am not a name it, claim it person, and I find rather a certain amount of disgust when I hear these guys and gals. But biblically, foundationally built, a successful guy runs many times with successful people. I, the guy on the street, may never be able to reach that clientele, but the successful guy with proper perspective can. I remember Pat Boone, good old Pat Boone.
Yes,
I think
sir.
he just lost his wife. He made the comment, you know, he was ministering throughout Hollywood during his heyday
Yep.
as a born-again believer, successful, driving fancy cars in a big house. But he had the proper perspective, and he was able to reach people that little Roger Weaver would never run in their circles.
Wow. Interesting perspective, brother. And I had not really, I guess I know what you're talking about, but I've never really, now you're making me feel twice as guilty, Roger. Because I didn't acknowledge God the way I should have. And you're right. I thought it was all about me getting there. I thought it was all about my skills, but it wasn't. There's somebody with me the whole time.
Well, Jim, there was, but again, yes, God gives and takes. I get that foundation. However, there's nothing wrong with a man saying, biblically based, foundationally based in God's Word, wow, I worked pretty hard and I had some success. This is pretty cool. You know, there's nothing wrong with a certain amount of ownership of it, because God does honor hard work. He does honor a man who gets up and puts his plow in the ground at 7 in the morning and keeps plowing till 10 at night. And there's certain rewards that come just from hard work. We don't have to be holier than thou on the topic all the time.
Roger, we're gonna have to go to a break. We have a lawyer that's going to be calling in the second hour, so I'm gonna disconnect you now. But if you want to call in and as a peer when we start talking to Brother Hopkins, you're welcome to call in, brother. Thank you for the input. I can give this some thought. Give this some thought. Thank you very much.
Stay tuned for Last Call with your host, BJ Edwards.
I wonder why it does that. I hope you're getting this.
Man-made.
What?
It's man-made.
I want you to take me aside after the show and see if you can explain to me what Roger was talking about, because I got a lot of respect for Roger, and I think he's a deep thinker. And
I do too, and I think he makes good comments. But I'll just add to that we can't regret our past because of where we are. And when I look at how would I be able to do what I'm doing now if I didn't have a foundation, financial foundation, whatever was in my heart before, it still prepared me to do some things that I'm doing now. And it gave me some avenues and some ways and means to do what I'm doing. If I'm struggling every day just to have something to eat, I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of work.
no,
Preparing the kingdom or proclaiming the kingdom, I guess is a better word. So, what you regret is also still it's blessing you now.
okay. I think okay.
You think okay? You still have to ponder that one.
Yeah, I do.
And that's okay too, because we do need to think about where we're at.
Yep.
Ultimately, our goal is our relationship with the Lord and bringing our family along with us.
My thinking about the past, I regret, but I don't regret. I'm really happy to be where I am right now, and I'm blessed to be where I am right now. Gee whiz. I mean, I can't tell you how much. So, yeah, I made some mistakes in the past, but I'm not living there. I'm just saying, okay, I'm where I am right now. It'd be nice to have all that stuff back, but I got to do what I do with what I got. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. So, back to the question, is America an occupied nation? When you woke up, Were you shocked to find this morning that you were now living in an occupied republic? There was a war that took place while you were sleeping, and your side had lost. You no longer have your former rights and liberties. You live in a captive nation and are now dimini, a second-class citizen. Your beliefs, aspirations are no longer welcomed and tolerated. You're being surveilled constantly, and your every step is being scrutinized. The rules and regulations of your new master are no longer favorable to your worldview. If you try to exercise what you consider to be your God-given rights, you'll either be summarily dismissed, bullied, taunted, fined, or put in solitary confinement. You find yourself, you find yourself continually criticized in your efforts. And what is left of your property is under constant threat. Your children are being indoctrinated in educational centers, and every day they grow further and further apart from you. They think you strange, quarrelsome, and question your leadership. Is any of this sounding familiar yet? When you stand up in public and you tell those people that you're talking with that you're a Christian, or for that matter, a conservative, do they immediately go, "Oh, yeah, boy, good. Talk on." No. They've been programmed. They've been indoctrinated. You're not a good person. You don't mean well. You've made mistakes in the past, and we're having to pay for them now. And now you want us to do even more? So where are we? Really, where are we if we call ourselves a Christian and if we're trying to walk that walk? Or if you call yourself a conservative and you're not remaining silent, you're doing what you need to be doing. How receptive is that world that you're in? You know, in war, when one tribe, country, state, or nation wins the conflict, their adversaries now have to live by a new set of rules. In other words, the losers have to yield to your demands if you're the winner. In these battles, there are no rewards for second place, only less liberties and privileges. A new ideology and moral code is now in place, and what was once right is now wrong, and what once was wrong is now right. Your opinion notwithstanding, which doesn't mean anything anyway to them. If you're on the losing end of the battle, don't you find yourself isolated with less and less freedoms, less and less abilities? Your liberties and choices are now severely limited. I want you to ask yourself, does that feel familiar? Do you feel comfortable at, say, Thanksgiving or at Christmas? Talking about what you believe to be true? You know to be true? Are you allowed to say that? Are you comfortable saying that? What happens when you do? Are you chastised? How are you treated by the rest of the family? Or those meetings that you go to? Those general public meetings? I mentioned the emails that I'm getting. One mentioned the New York issue and how offended they were, and here, sign a petition, which I did. But it's not just the state of New York. We saw in Virginia, I told you about the other states that have no respect for the life of an unborn baby. And I think it's fair to compare that to how we treat the life of an endangered species. The egg, for crying out loud. just a mass of tissue, right? But encapsulated in a spotted owl egg. And our schools, oh my goodness. Most everybody sends their child to government-run schools, which are indoctrination centers. They do teach specifically. I was at school board meetings for 10 years. Sat at school board meetings for 10 years. Whew, well, you talk about a stressful situation. Most of the decisions, by the way, were already made before you ever got there. It was a quote-unquote public meeting, but those decisions were already made. What did I learn that they were teaching? This is big, and it has to be foundational. Life has no meaning. You evolved. There was some sort of a cosmic fart billions of years ago, and as a result of that, that goo and mess became you eventually. But you're an accident. Multiculturalism and diversity. I'm okay, you're okay. Unless, of course, you're a Christian or you're a conservative and you're not a socialist. Boy, how that pendulum has swung. Man, number 3, what they're taught, not God, is the measure of all things. Key. You can do anything you want to do. All you need to do is just be better educated. That's all. And then, I asked for a drum roll, but I heard one earlier, and I don't think I want to hear that again. Finally, the state is your daddy. Cradle to grave. The government, complete strangers that don't love your children, but indoctrinate your children and tell them that if they ever have a need, that they need to look to the government. Socialism, right? We graduate 1 million kids from high school annually that have been taught these 4 basics of life. Life has no meaning, morals are relative, the state's your daddy, and man is the measure of all things. 12 years, and then they send them off to finishing school. And when they come back, that's probably Greg. And when they come back, what do you have in hand? You have complete strangers. Greg,
hey,
hang in.
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
This is Greg. I'm standing by.
All right.
All right.
You're live, Greg, so hang in there, brother. We're going to go to a break here in a couple of minutes and come back to you.
I'll turn the volume
All
down
right,
a
thank you
bit.
so much.
Okay. And they send you back complete strangers. But more than ever, these strangers are becoming your enemies in your own family. This almost sounds biblical, doesn't it, Mr. Anderson?
The enemy, your enemy will be those of your own household.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, they've been trained. They don't respect you because they see what values you hold, and they've been told that those values are wrong. And they will use them to get their way with what it is they want done. And it's for the children, right? It's for the children. Of course it is. The state's their daddy, and they're listening clearly, very clearly. The schools are the guardians. And yes, your parents do mean well, but they just don't meet state standards as custodians. And you know what? Some children are regularly taken from their native-born homes before they ever get to these learning centers. Sadly, many of these innocent offspring end up in homes with drug abusers, pedophiles, and or other adults that are confused about their sexuality. And well, you know what happens then. What if you have a tomboy? What happens to them in this society? It's scary, because that tomboy isn't allowed to go through their life the way that they normally do. Mrs. BJ was a tomboy. In today's world, I don't think I would have ever met Mrs. BJ. It would have likely been Mr. BJ. And there's only room for one of those in the house. Hey, BJ Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. When we come back, we have Greg Hopkins. Boy, I just look really forward to talking to Greg. And we're going to talk about whether we're imprisoned or not. BJ Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Your last call, 614-423-4220. Let's give our guest a chance to talk a little bit. Hang in there. We'll be back with you in about 30 seconds.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
Mr. Anderson, I don't know whether I'm cursed or not. We had a lawyer call in earlier today, and now I'm bringing a lawyer on as a guest. Greg Hopkins, I love you, brother, is a recovering lawyer, a city prosecutor, police use of force law instructor, former city judge in 2 towns, and criminal defense lawyer. He's been teaching the Bible to teens and adults for 40 years. He now trains CCP holders and armed church security teams in self-defense law. He also does expert witnessing in firearms and self-defense causes. He's written a book called A Time to Kill, The Myth of Christian Pacifism, on the Bible and self-defense. Greg Hopkins, welcome to Last Call, brother.
Well, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate being on, and want to say hello to all your listeners. Always a pleasure to be on with you all.
Thank you. I'm going to quit while we're ahead. Thanks.
and you're not, maybe you're not cursed with having lawyers on. You know, when I started off to law school, my dad said, "Son, I've been working around lawyers all my life." I met maybe 3 that were honest. "Why are you going to law school?" I said, "Dad, I'll make 4." So
I love it. Hey, Greg, we've been talking. Well, actually, I've been talking. Mr. Anderson doesn't say a whole lot. We've been talking about Christians and where they are in today's society. And I sent you an article that I'd written for the Wisconsin News, and I wanted you to take a look at that, because the other day I was for some reason God had me thinking about what we're supposed to be doing until He comes. But we seem to be doing just the opposite. We're not occupying this nation. This nation has occupied. Look at the areas of influence. Look at our government. Look at our schools. Look at the entertainment industry. Look at the news media. Look at the family, and look at the church. And what you see is humanism, secular humanism. You see very little Christianity in any of those institutions, and those institutions control our daily lives.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at this going, we've been captured, but we don't really realize that we've been captured, especially if you're Christians, because all the rules are being made and enforced by, and that's where you come in. They're being well, not necessarily you personally, but what you represented for many years. The enforcement side of it is taking care of the secular humanist. Now, I'll say one more thing. I stood outside of a church for about 9 months trying to get the church to engage the culture. The very first day I was there. The very first day I was there, almost the minute I was on the ground, there was a police officer who was directing traffic for the church. It was a very large church, very large. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like it was a movie. He stood with his back to me, and he turned his head around, almost all the way around, and said in the scariest voice, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
So Christians, what are we doing here? Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, it's kind of like the question I once heard in a sermon that was entitled, "Well, what are you doing here, for heaven's sake?" You know, your article was very, very good. It says you were asking the question, Christians, do you ever feel like you're living in an occupied country? Mm-hmm. And it was, and then what do you do? Your great question what do you do if you find yourself living in an occupied country? Well, let's discuss the problem first. Why do we feel like we're living in an occupied country? An article I ran across yesterday before I talked to you about from the Federalist, I believe. A lady wrote an essay, and she said, if you there is a sociologist that has defined certain areas called super zips, and it means you are in a zip code in which not only have the people gravitated and become very, very wealthy, but they are almost exclusively graduates of Ivy League schools. Uh-huh. And she says if you look at, especially at the bedroom communities around the District of Columbia, this is almost entirely true. It says, but previously you would have mixed neighborhoods, up to 30 to 50 years ago, where you would have at least middle class to upper class to the rich, if not the poor mixed in some cases, certainly lower middle class. I grew up in a town like that, a small town. But now the rich are kind of closing ranks, and consequently they can literally move from neighborhood to neighborhood and not know a single person who is not of their economic position and of this very same educational background and of the very same political ideology. That's what these super zips are, and consequently you get a mindset of how things are supposed to be, and it is it's a preconception of looking at the world that it's like understanding that there's such a thing as gravity. You go up there saying, okay, progressivism, liberalism is the way to go. It's just a self-evident fact. That's one of the problems we're dealing with. And let me give you an idea of where it really started. It actually started with progressivism in the late 1880s in the United States.
Over a century ago?
Yes, where people decided that they were actually smarter than the founders. And we got this from Europe and things like that. But you had people that came along like Woodrow Wilson and even Teddy Roosevelt and John Dewey, and they set out to change the fundamental basis of America, thinking that they were smarter than the founders. They rejected the Constitution. They rejected the history of the founders and what they believed in, and thought, well, we can do this better. And the point that it actually started affecting everybody was in 1933, after Franklin Delano Roosevelt took office. And I take this from the book A Time for Truth by William E. Simon. Everybody should go to Amazon. That book is only about a quarter on Amazon. But if you get that book, you will understand how America got into the mess that it did. He was Foreign Secretary of the Treasury, and a very wise man. And he tells this story. He says in 1933, FDR got all these brain trusters together, and he said, now look, everybody in this country knows that the Constitution is a negative document. And it says negatively that the federal government cannot interfere in the lives of individuals or the states. He said, your job, gentlemen, is to convince them, the American people, that it says exactly the opposite. Now go do that. The person that was telling this story was telling it to the Democratic National Committee in 1968. And after he told this story, he said, folks, as of this year or time period in history, FDR and we have succeeded. Most Americans believe that the government has a right to interfere with their lives and with the conduct of the states. You see?
Oh, amen. Look, it's hard to argue against Santa Claus. You know, free health care, free education, free room and board, free food, ho, ho, ho. Maybe we should say free for all, because that's exactly what we're headed if we continued with this insanity, Greg.
Oh, yeah. The Tocqueville. Well, first of all, let's talk about, because this leads us to a conversation I had with my prayer partner this morning. We have breakfast every Saturday that we can, that one of us is not out of town. And this morning he was talking about his youngest daughter, who came home this week from her poli-sci class, her political science class. Mm-hmm. And they had discussed the fact that Trump was elected by the Electoral College but did not win the popular vote. And she was horrified. She was scandalized because she said, our teacher told us, this is a democracy. And the Electoral College is completely wrong for a democracy. And her dad and her mom started to say, no, this is a constitutional republic, and then began teaching their daughter, because they've both been very big on teaching both their daughters critical thinking through their lives, just as my daddy did, and mom did, and probably yours did too. But this was one where the teacher is propagandizing. That is, I said, tell Chloe this. First of all, ask her who's the two best presidents that we ever had. And I said, she'll probably say what everybody else says, Washington, Lincoln. I said, okay, ask her if Lincoln won the popular vote. Number one. And where would we have been without Lincoln? I said, number two, and tell her what Benjamin Franklin said about a democracy. Benjamin Franklin said a democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what to have for dinner.
Yeah, yeah.
And John Adams said, in the whole history of man, there was never a democracy that did not commit suicide. And then finally, I told my friend, I'd tell her, I quote de Tocqueville, who wrote Democracy in America, a Frenchman who was one of the best observers of America during the Jacksonian period. And he said, democracy will last only until the voters learn that they can vote themselves money from the public treasury.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
It comes to the Santa Claus that you talked about. Yep. And everybody does love Santa Claus. And that's what progressivism is partially about. It's trying to make, and this is the whole point of progressivism, because it's an atheist doctrine that believes, like communism, that the government, the state, is God. Okay? And what they want to convince people of is that everything good comes from the state. Therefore, why do we need God?
Yep. Life has no meaning. Morals are relative. Man's the measure of all things, and the state's your daddy. That's what we do with our government-run schools, brother. And they drill that into the heads of our kids and drill it. We got about a minute before break. Go ahead.
Say again. I'm sorry. I missed that.
I said we have about a minute for break, and I need to give a warning to our listeners. Okay. I seem to be attracted to people that like to read a lot. Not only do they like to read a lot, but they like to share what they read. So I want to warn them that you are, again, one of those guests that likes to read and likes to share it. I apologize to my audience in advance. Hey, listen, when we come back from break, if the founders were to return today, or for that matter, Martians were to take a look at our nation, what do you think they would say? Who would they say is controlling this nation? And what happened? B.J. Edwards Long, Mr. Anderson, your last call. Guest Greg Hopkins.
Last call with B.J. Edwards. Real talk about real life.
I love our chat. I love our chat. Don't get much time. We've got a chat room here, and just some of the comments the people say. They know what's going on, brother. They know what's going on.
Oh.
Hey, give us a little contact information about Greg, and if somebody wants to talk to you further, I wouldn't know why, but again, a recovering lawyer. But if they happen to want to get in contact with you, Greg, or if they want to support you, what might they do?
Well, if they would like to get my books, they can go on Amazon. They're available in the Kindle and the paperback format. Also on my website, which sells my new video on Alabama self-defense law. But if you're not in Alabama, don't get it, because your state laws will vary and your mileage may differ. But if you go to AlabamaLegalDefense.com, AlabamaLegalDefense.com, that is our website. You can get both books and videos there. If you want to contact me personally, any comments, questions, or curses, there would be, you can go to Hopkins_Greg at Comcast.net. Hopkins, all lowercase, Hopkins_Greg at Comcast.net. You can also go to my Facebook page and to my Facebook author page as well if you'd like to contact me, if you'd like to friend me. Whatever you'd like. And you can see what I do. I try to do 6 days a week. I try to do a daily meditation on a Bible verse. And then I have all kinds of other things, from humor to radical right-wing memes. So
I got you. Hey, that's Greg Hopkins, right? Hopkins. Greg
Mouse. That's right. Yes.
ComCast.net.
Yes, Comcast. ComCast.net.
Okay. So that's Hopkins_Greg at Comcast.net. I want to make sure people contact you as versus me, because I don't want the complaints. Yeah. You deserve them. You've earned the right to have them.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
We had visitors. We had visitors yesterday to America. They were the founding fathers. You know, those white racist guys. You know who I'm talking about, right? That founded probably the greatest nation on earth. Accidentally, I'm sure. It wasn't on purpose. They're back. They just landed in Washington, D.C., and they're looking around, and they're putting their hand on their chin, and they're going, What are they thinking, Greg? What are they thinking?
Oh, man. Well, if I could recommend a book to your people, to all your listeners, there is a book exactly on this subject, What Would the Founders Say, by Larry Schweikert. Many of your listeners may know Larry. He wrote A Patriot's History of the United States. If you don't have that book, run out and get it. You can also often find it in the used book sections the discount book sections, because it's been out since like 2005. He also has later histories of the world, a Patriot's History of the World from up to 1945, and then he has volume 2, which I'm reading right now, is A Patriot's History of the World up to 2012. But Larry Schweikert has a book, What Would the Founders Say? And he goes into a whole bunch of subjects. Wow. let's go back to John Winthrop of the Puritan of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. He said, "We are to be a city on a hill, demonstrating the goodness of God when people are covenanting with God to form their government." Okay, and that government will be a government of freedom. Ronald Reagan used Winthrop's quote in his first inaugural address. This nation, in so many ways, was in fact founded as a Christian nation. It was founded upon largely Reformation principles, and if you go back to the people that the founders read, to Montesquieu and to Locke and people like that, you will find that ultimately they are biblically based people in their philosophies, and they expected that the United States should become a light to the nations as a bastion of and a demonstration of the Christian faith, just as the Jewish nation was supposed to be a light to the Gentiles of godly living.
We have a caller on the line, and Rogers. He's a lawyer, and of course he wants to have the last say. So I guess I have to give him an audience again. Roger, what's your comment or question for Greg?
Two lawyers, no time to talk.
I just wanted to see if Greg would be okay if he and I tag team against you.
Uh-oh. Yeah, go ahead. It'll take more than two of you, but go ahead and take your best shot.
Greg, I've enjoyed your comments, but I have a question for you, Greg. And it's a wide open question, but yet could also be rifled in as a one-shotter, and that is this. The health of the evangelical church today, what is your thought?
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing. Could you repeat that for me, BJ?
He said the health of today's evangelical church. What would you say?
The health?
Yeah, instead of being a lawyer, he wants you to be a doctor and examine today's church, okay?
That's a fantastic question. The problem is, God told Solomon in 2 Chronicles 7:14, he said, "If my people who are called by my name will repent of their wicked ways and turn to me, then I will hear from heaven and I will heal their land, saith the Lord." Okay? Now that doesn't mean that we sit around and gripe about, this be a better nation if people just stop going to strip clubs. Well, that's not who God's talking about. He's talking about the people who claim to be His, straightening up their lives in true repentance. This is something that the Puritans understood. You cannot expect God on your side if you are only giving Him lip service. And I think here is where the evangelical church has hurt. So, we Americans, we think because I'm a Christian. Must be. I was America's Christian nation. I was born here. Read the Bible a couple times. Look, if you're born in a bakery, that does not make you a donut. Okay. And if you're born in a garage, it does not make you a car. And we Americans have barely scratched the Bible for generations. When I look back, I'm reading a book right now called "The Light and the Glory" by Peter Marshall Jr. about the godly destiny of America, and he gives example after example after example. But there is a covenant there that obedience, repentance, and obedience, and acknowledgement of the sovereignty of God is the as we lawyers would say, is the precatory condition of this contract. And so, that we have to do first, we have to be the people that He wants us to be, not who we think we ought to be. We need to dive into Scripture. We need to start living it, and we have to stop letting our politics direct our biblical ideas, and instead let God, let the Bible direct our biblical, our political ideas.
Greg?
Yes,
I agree with that, but I'm 58 years old. I'm a little gray-haired guy, getting a little grayer. I don't think anybody's reading their Bible.
It was well. See, that's the problem. Is we may read it, but then do we do it? That's the question.
That's the two-pronged test. I don't think anybody's reading their Bible regularly, except on Sunday in the pew, and they carry their Bible around. And secondly, then I don't think that they're not willing to implement it and be obedient to the Word.
Yeah. It's one of our elders one time. This is way back in the '80s. He went up to visit a cousin in Cleveland, and went to church with him. And he was carrying his Bible into church. And the greeter at the door said, "You carrying a Bible?" He says, "Yeah." And the greeter said, "What are you, some kind of fanatic?" Yeah. but what is a fanatic? I mean, a fanatic comes from the word fan. Now, if we can all relate to getting to OSU Stadium and rooting for the Buckeyes, I mean, and standing up, how often do we actually stand up and go, "Yeah, God, what a play!" We're not in the game. Our head is not in the game, and people need to see that. And my mommy always taught us as kids. She said, when people see a sermon, then they'll want to hear one, and that's the problem. That was the Pharisees' problem too. They knew everything about God, but when God Himself came in the body of Jesus, they could not recognize God because they did not know God. We need to translate what we know into living.
The devil, fellas, is in the detail, because there are so many, God, heaven forgive me, there are so many experts. There are so many Christian experts, Greg and Roger. There are so many experts, and only they know how to do it. And it's got to be done right. Go ahead.
Just go into a Christian bookstore, Jim. It's instead of reading the Bible yourself and asking the Holy Spirit to inspire His Word to tell you, we all buy books by somebody else who's been inspired.
Yeah, that's one of the problems. I was advised by a person when my book was first out. I've been trying to get my book into bookstores in general forever, and any bookstore can order it, but on the shelves, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, no way. Why? I asked this guy, and he had his own small Christian publishing company. He had it for 18 years. He says, "Greg," he read my book. He said, "Greg, I'll tell you why. Because right now, Christians only want to read feel-good books, and yours is not a feel-good book."
Yeah, love.
Say again, I didn't get that.
He said, love them to death. Love the sinners to death. I think is what Roger's trying to say.
Yeah.
Say again, I'm sorry.
Roger was trying to indicate that when you go to church, it's all about the love of God. And we're not denying that God doesn't love.
Yes.
But that's all it's about. We don't see. A good friend describes this as we see Jesus. Well, we're back to the subject of Santa Claus. It's somebody's lap that we sit on, and give me this, Daddy, and give me this, and give me this, and just that's how they see. That's how they see Jesus. But there is a hell. There is a hell, and how did that get there? And what purpose does it serve? And Jesus, go ahead.
And because there is a hell, we have the sacrifice of Jesus, which we fail to recognize. Roger has hit upon a very important point: the love of God. The love of God. That we go at it so continually that we fail to recognize that the sacrifice and the agony that Jesus went through was a part of the love of God, and we simply don't appreciate that. And because if we did, we'd change the way we live. Say, and when people think that it says, it says way back in Deuteronomy, God says, now when you're sitting under your own on your own olive tree and your own fig tree and have your own vines, and you've occupied this land that I've given you, don't sit there and think, well, look at everything I've done. He says, because you will forget me if you think for 1 second that this was your accomplishment and not mine. And over again, God tells us that he is the one that gives wealth and honor and fame to us. It gives us even the ability to make wealth. And so but in America, when we, like Roger said, when we just go on this love, we tend to think that we are actually worthy of God's love. And when we think that, then we start thinking that God owes us something. Well, now that works very well. If it's the politicians will tell us that's what government will do for us. Government loves you because you're wonderful, and it'll give you anything.
Jesus is just okay, brother. Jesus just okay. We got to take a quick break. Roger, thank you very much for your call. Thank you for participation. Can you hang in there with us for about 15 more minutes, brother?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay. B.J. Edwards along Mr. Anderson, your last call. Greg Hopkins. Hang on, Greg.
Stay tuned for Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
So where we are in terms of America, what do you see as, how would you advise, Greg Hopkins, how would you advise, how do you advise Christians that you speak with to be salt and light? Because, Greg, what I see is they just laugh at us. That they let us go out and pound our chest and do whatever we're going to do, but in the end, they still control the game. How do we turn that around? We are still the captives. How do we turn that around?
Once again, we need to start getting serious. What
does that mean? What does that mean? I mean, I'm serious. I'm serious. Most of the people I'm talking to, they're serious.
Yeah.
They're seriously upset with this stuff. Stop it!
Let me find the verse here just a second. 2 Chronicles
7:14?
19, 1 and 2. Okay. It says a prophet went to King Jehoshaphat and rebuked him, and he said this, and he said, should you help the wicked and love those who hate the Lord, and so bring wrath upon you from the Lord? How we have to sit down and think when we're electing leaders and so on. Because who am I helping? Am I helping the wicked? I mean, how do you call yourself a Christian and vote for somebody that supports abortion? That literally, quite literally, the Democrat Party has become the very Nazis that they fought against in World War II.
Absolutely.
They have the same beliefs about human life, and it didn't start with the Nazis. It started with progressive liberals in the Weimar Republic, and the sociologists and the doctors came up with a phrase called life unworthy of life. That when a person takes from the state because of their mental or physical disability more than they contribute to the state, then the state can kill them. And they starved thousands of handicapped children to death, and eventually went to the terminally ill and the elderly. Long before any Jew was ever put in a gas chamber, those gas chambers were tested on those very people, you see. And this is where the Democrat Party has come to. And God asks us, should you help the wicked and love those who hate the Lord and bring wrath on yourself to the Lord? We need to be serious about who we ally ourselves with. And this includes a lot of the Republican Party, too.
I agree with
I'm
that.
not just talking.
Greg, I agree with that,
Yeah.
but we've got a problem inside of the problem. I'm not going to make any friends here, but you had mentioned abortion, and I'm about to say something that's going to upset some people. But please, we can get mad at one another, but we can still love one another. There is an absolute argument in pro-life circles that goes something like this: if we do not stop abortion totally, and I agree with that, under all circumstances, then we should not bother to work on partial issues. Say, for instance, heartbeat bills. Okay, you've heard you've heard or professed this concept, but what if we indeed are occupied, prisoners in a new land with new laws, and if this is a war and we've lost territory, then should we not try to take back some territory every opportunity to gain a little ground, as versus demanding all or nothing?
Right. We have to take back the territory as much as we can gain. If it and you see, sometimes that means some kind of compromise. If you have to compromise,
it's not a compromise, Greg. Satan has the land. Yeah. He has the land, and we have an opportunity to take a piece of it. That's not compromise, unless it's Satan's compromise. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But we have to take whatever we can and to then teach people from that point. So if we can stop, 99% of abortions, that's great. We don't you don't kill a bill because it doesn't give you everything you want. But just as you see, the progressives did this, they took little by little. Well, oftentimes, and even when the Jews went to Canaan, they took the land little by little as they were able to. In the same way, when Christ takes control of our heart, we give up control of our heart day by day and little by little until He has complete control. It's not going to happen overnight. We're not going to change minds and hearts, and that's where we have to win. We have to win hearts and minds in order to change electoral outcomes. But to do that, we have to be solid on what the Bible says about biblical issues. Whether it's it says that all the leaders in the Bible are always told, "You shall not favor rich over the poor," and all the progressives, all the liberals start cheering, yeah, and it says
90%, 90%.
But you shall not, nor shall you favor poor over the rich. No, they don't want us to say that, because it said equal justice under law, equal opportunity is what the Constitution provides for us, because the founders understood the fallen nature of man, and they understood that people are prejudiced. But the liberals want to say, oh, it's only justice if you help the poor. No, well, that's ridiculous. It's non-biblical. We have to be fair to everybody, but justice has to come both ways. You don't give either side an edge. That's why corporate welfare is just as bad as individual welfare. You see? So there are, and of course in Isaiah chapter 5, 20, 21, chapter 9, 14 through 16, chapter 10, verse 10, 1 and 2, God says, "Woe unto them who call evil good and good evil." Well, when we when we say, "Okay, I'm going to let this guy in," but even though I know he stands for something that God hates, well, then we've allied ourselves with evil. Now, sometimes, people say, "Well, it's a choice between the lesser of two evils." Well, first of all, it may be. Sometimes we're down to that. But Abigail Adams, who was a very faithful Christian woman, she had that same problem in the election between Jefferson and Aaron Burr. And she said this. She said, and at this point, Jefferson was completely estranged he had actually worked against her husband as president, and it had been a very vicious campaign against John Adams.
Yep.
But she said, I have known Thomas Jefferson for many years, and I know that his basic character is good and good for this country, whereas I know Aaron Burr in my heart does not have, that his basic character is not good, and he will not be good for us. Well, and Burr was actually tried for treason, to trying to start his own company, her own country. So it was. She was right. You know, sometimes with that, and people say, "Well, Christians are terrible because they voted for Trump and he's a whoremonger," which he is. I mean, he's a very honest whoremonger. You know, you ask him, "Hey, you go out and you hire a horse?" "Yeah, I do."
Well,
but he has shown some measure of repentance, and he's certainly not practicing it in the White House like Clinton did. But the whole thing is, do you want to go with a guy who is actually going to preserve American values, or do you want to go with Hillary Clinton, who is a Marxist-Leninist? You know, you go, okay, I got a guy, you know, he's got some problems, but otherwise he could advance godly principles. And then you got this lady over here who is never going to come close to a godly principle and wouldn't know it if it hit her in the face. You know? I don't have to worry. I don't have to think too much about that.
Greg Hopkins. Greg Hopkins. Greg _Hopkins, Hopkins, at Comcast.
No,
go ahead.
That's Hopkins _Greg.
Greg, I'm sorry, yeah. Hopkins _Greg, Greg, at Comcast.net. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes. I want to put this out on the table and let you talk a little bit about it. We need to create an environment, in my humble opinion, brother, where Christian ideals, Christian thoughts, Christian leaders can get traction in the marketplace of ideas. We don't have the public opinion on our side. And we assume that it exists, and then we embarrass ourselves in public, making the rest of us look bad and look like losers when we act like we're making the rules. And here's what we need to do. We need to take America back one mosque at a time. I didn't misspeak. I didn't misspeak. When Muslims come into our country, they establish territories. And we're talking about that land thing again. They put a mosque, and that mosque is holy ground, and it's going to grow from there. And we need to learn from our enemies and do the same thing, Greg. How do we get? Go ahead.
Well, do what I did. When I got out of college at age 22, I was elected to city council. I ran and was elected. I'm still the youngest city councilman ever elected in Waverly, Ohio. Okay, and I used, as far as I could, Christian and conservative principles. Even though sometimes when I did it, I was roundly criticized for it. But later on, I found out some of the people that opposed me then had said, "Hey, we thought that kid was just wet behind the ears, and now we understand that what he was talking about." You know, so the point here is we need Christians on school boards. Okay, we need Christians on
one mosque at a time.
On city councils. We need start with the basic areas. If you're on the school board, then you should be able to pick up Lee Strobel's book, A Case for the Creator, and say, okay, I want everybody on this board to read this, and in a month we're going to come back, and I'm going to ask you exactly why we are teaching evolution in our schools. And you've got to give me a scientific answer. Why? They won't be able to do it, okay? We have to actually stand up and challenge the culture, like Isaiah and Jeremiah did. We have got to say, people, men are saying peace, peace, but there is no peace. But we also have to say with Jeremiah, there's no peace without God, but God has a plan for you, a plan for good and not evil. Jeremiah 29:11, a plan for hope and joy You know, he says, but it's only going to happen when you seek him with your whole heart. And we have to demonstrate by our lives, both private and public, that being godly, that is acknowledging God as sovereign is a better path than the idea that government run by men is God.
Greg, that's going to take an awful lot of faith.
Oh, sure. But it's got, but Jesus said,
got 1 minute.
I will not leave you nor forsake you. Okay? If we step out on faith, then God will bless that. We just have to have the guts to start conversations and the guts to say, okay, here am I, Lord, send me. And go into that city council, go into that school board, go into whatever, your condo committee. I don't care. But get involved and show what God has to say. And let people know that where you're coming from. And then let them sit back and say, oh, hey, that really works.
Or at the Thanksgiving Thursday dinner, Greg Hopkins,
Yeah.
I thank you. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your wisdom. Greg, stop reading so much, okay? You make the rest of us look bad. We'll have you on again soon, brother.
Well, God bless your show. God bless your listeners. You're doing a great ministry, and anytime I can help out, please give me a holler.
All right, brother. I appreciate you. Thanks much. God bless you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Greg Hopkins. That's Hopkins_Greg at Comcast.net. Good man. Good man. Really appreciate what he does. When we come back, I don't think I've gotten enough trouble today, so I'm just going to step in a little further and deal with an issue that needs to be dealt with. B.J. Edwards along, Mr. Anderson, your last call.
Stay tuned for Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Supreme Court legalized contraception in 1965, pornography in 1969, abortion in 73, homosexuality in 2003, homosexual marriage in 2015. Many Americans are concerned about the influx of foreigners across our southern border. The fear is that we are being invaded by foreigners, that they will dilute our culture, not adhere to our laws, and threaten our nation's sovereignty. Really? That hasn't happened already? Building a border wall is immoral in today's America? It's so sad that we're now calling for the resignation of a Virginia governor. Not because he's for late-term abortions, even after the child has completed the third trimester, but for I wish I could say this. Let's just say that I would like to be able to say this, but maybe I can't. So here's what I'd like to be able to say. That it's a shame that the governor of Virginia, they're not asking for his resignation because he believes that a child after birth could be murdered, or for that matter, a child before birth. But because a racist act that he admitted that he had committed several decades ago. Not because he believes in murdering children, but because he committed the sin of sins in America. I heard somebody on a program last night talking about, well, okay, we really need to start talking about the racial issues in America. What we need to talk about, I wish I could say this, is the paranoia of a certain group of people. That number one, if it's happening, need to learn how to forgive and grow from that. Have you ever forgiven anybody? If it were possible, I'd like to talk about how we are so out of balance on this issue, and yet to continue to pick that racist scab. No, I'm not siding with the governor, nor condone his actions. I'm just saying that we appear to have our priorities a bit out of whack. We need to recalibrate. Border walls are immoral. Discrimination, the ultimate sin. Number 1 on the 10 Commandments. And infanticide, just another day in the park. Not even on the radar screen. Even Fox News is not bringing up the biggest issue. It's sad, sad, sad. And oh yeah, our children are watching. At least the ones that have survived the abortion holocaust. And why does this continue? It continues because we've brainwashed everybody into believing that racism is a real thing in 2019 on the mind of every white man. Every white man we see, especially those who support Donald Trump, right? I made a comment on the chat about Christians being paranoid about who we are. Well, I see a lot of paranoia here. Looking under every bed, behind every tree. Us white folk, especially us older white folks, and yeah, Christians. We don't sleep these days because we're staying up nights thinking about horrible ways to discriminate people because of their skin color. You know, in Chicago, a young black, and oh, by the way, gay actor, seemingly gets up in the middle of the night, a bitter cold night, walks over to Subway in the middle of the morning, late night, grabs a sandwich, and starts on his walk back to the hotel. On the way, did I say he was black? On the way, he says that he was accosted, threatened, and when the police arrived at the hotel where he was staying, he had a noose around his neck. He says he was accosted, threatened, and a noose tied around his neck. He calls the police, and there he is, likely sitting on the bed with a noose around his neck. Kind of picturesque, isn't it? Almost convenient. Of course, race conspiracy theorists immediately jumped on the story and claim, here's proof, yet again, that racism is real. Are we speaking something into reality? As versus taking a good, hard, honest look at it? This is tough stuff, folks. And I wish I could say this, but I can't say this. Because in case you haven't noticed, I'm white. So if I say something like this, then somebody, yeah, I've got black friends too, by the way. Oh, by the way, when I talk to my black friends and I talk to them about being black, they chastise me because they don't consider themselves black. Shame on me for noticing. And good for them for saying that. Let me ask you this. Would you place your entire reputation on this young gentleman's uncollaborated report? In other words, would you be willing, if you're a race monger, a race baiter, if that's how you make your living, would you be willing to go all in on this? I'm not saying this did happen, and I'm not saying it didn't happen. But would you be willing to go all in with this? In other words, if you find out that this didn't happen, like a church that was burned in the South several years ago by supposedly a racist, but wasn't, would you put all your money into the pot? Would you be all in? Would you be willing to go all in on this? And if it turns out that it didn't happen, that it was imaginary, or maybe he was doing this because his series, his TV series, isn't doing as well as it should be doing, and they needed something to prop it up. What happened? What happens to you if this isn't as the individual says it is? Then maybe he was, dreaming, or maybe he misunderstood. I mean, can you blame him, given all the racism that's going on in the U.S. today? Maybe he looked across the street and thought that those individuals meant him harm. Who knows at this point? Again, I'm not saying it didn't happen, and I'm not saying it did happen. But I am noticing that there are those out there right now that have jumped on the bandwagon and shaking their finger. What's up, white folk? Trumpsters. Wow.
We're almost out of time, but I have a little clip with one of our favorite people, Pelosi, that kind of answers this question a little bit.
Alrighty. Maybe the governor of Virginia was in Chicago last week.
Play.
Is it going to play for us?
It will, but I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. There it is.
Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I have a clip here of Nancy Pelosi that you just got to see. I'm making sure that it's put in one of these videos in case C-SPAN decides to scrub it or something, which they might. This is a very interesting little clip. Nancy Pelosi, once again, the gift that keeps giving to us Republicans, has given us the Democrat playbook right here. She tells us one of their tactics, what they do, how they like to smear everyone. So, pay attention, here it goes.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. You demonize, and then we call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic, and it's self-evident.
So did you catch that? What she says is you start out with something that's a lie, and you throw it out there, and then the press picks up on it, and they write stories about it, and you say, see, it's written in the press, so it must be true. This is exactly what they did with Trump. They demonized him. It was all fake about the Russia collusion. This is what they did with Kavanaugh. It was all fake about these women coming and saying that he did these things. The last one was even ludicrous, that Swetnick one. This is the situation we're dealing with. This is how these people work. They worked with the press to make it seem like what they were saying was legitimate. They tell the lies. The press reports the lies as if they were truth. Truthification.
I just think it's way too easy for them to do those kind of things.
Well, it is. It is.
Way too easy.
And that's some of the ground that we have to take back.
Absolutely.
Sadly, it sounds like we have to prove ourselves. And I don't know whether that's what I'm saying or not. But we need to recognize that we are not in a position with the kind of control that we think we have. We don't live in a nation that has one set of laws for everybody. It just isn't that way anymore. There is discrimination going on in this nation. Oh, yeah, there is. But you better take a good hard look at who's being discriminated against. Who are the most discriminated people in the world? In the United States, who are they? You're going to find that they have a certain set of characteristics, and it has nothing to do at all with their skin color or where they came from.
But that kind of reflects back on the question you asked earlier about the little scenario you gave of the guy with the sandwich. You know, are you going to jump in all the way, or are you going to find out?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hey, again, we appreciate all of you. We appreciate your participation. And we'll try to do better next time. Try to get you a bigger picture of who we are and what we're about. Go to our website, Natural Family Strong, and please give us a yes on our
pledge,
Natural Family Pledge. Give us a click. Give us a thumbs up. God bless you. Have a happy Groundhog's Day. Great weekend. And we'll talk to you all next Saturday, bright and early, 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. Thanks again.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Last Call with BJ Edwards.